What do you call 1 million politicians and 1 million civil servants, all at the beach, all buried up to their neck in sand? You call it not enough sand. Last week, current serving MP Rupert Lowe was kicked out of the Reform Party under accusations of workplace bullying, with the chairman, Yusuf, lodging a complaint against him with the police. Naturally, these are very serious accusations, so if these accusations are false, then said false accusations would be no less serious. And guess what? It would appear these accusations are false, or at bare minimum these aren't the real reason he was booted from the party. The workplace bullying was over 2 women from his office lodging separate complaints to HR. Only problem, they weren't even about him. One of these women came forward to say her complaint was about someone else in his office, her regarding him as a good man, who is being subjected to a horrific and unfair ordeal. And the accusation by Yusuf to the police that Rupert verbally threatened him, with no detail given with what, how or why. And this happened 3 months ago. 3 months ago. That stinks that he supposedly sat on threats supposedly serious enough to go to the police with for 3 months and then gave no public details, which is very odd if true. But maybe he is guilty. I guess we'll just have to wait for the investigation. Oh wait, no we don't, because Farage has already made clear Lowe will not be allowed back into the party even if he's exonerated on all counts. AKA, he's not even guilty until proven innocent, he's just guilty because Nigel Farage says so. But why? Well, by complete coincidence, this just so happened after Lowe gave an interview in which he gave Farage and the Reform Party a bit of constructive criticism. Add this with the fact Lowe appeared to be gaining popularity quickly with his brutally honest demands for mass deportations of foreign criminals, and that the party is supposedly in the process of democratisation. I don't think we need to get the whiteboard out here to put 2 and 2 together. In my judgment, Farage booted him for political reasons because he felt threatened by him. And given the only explanation Farage has given to explain said criticism is...
Why is Rupert Lowe going public with this?
Well, perhaps he wants to be Prime Minister. Most people in politics do.
In my judgment, that is a Freudian slip. He was threatened by him potentially being the next party leader and taking away his opportunity to sit at number 10. And it's bloody stupid, since as long as Farage did what he claimed, he would have stayed the leader, and Lowe probably would have been the next leader of the party after he retired, assuming reform actually did democratise. Though I don't regard that last part as very likely, since in response to all the backlash Farage has got over this, now reform members have been silenced from speaking about this to the media, and presumably in general. Oh yeah, we'll democratise, but only when it comes to the stuff I agree with. Now, I am by no means a hater of Farage. He's a man I've had a lot of respect for and was looking forward to the prospect of him as the next Prime Minister, which seemed very likely given the pace of the growth in the polls. This, however, has exposed a very ugly side to him, which makes me have my doubts about whether he's qualified to run a country. I mean, if he can't even take criticism from within his own party, then how much tolerance will he show everyone else once he's given the keys to the chocolate factory? If I wanted a dictator with a fragile ego as a leader, then I would have voted for Starmer. For the greater good of the party, he should have put his ego in the backseat and let it go. Good leaders focus on the mission, not the title and reward. And that's who he used to be. I remember years ago when Farage was fighting tooth and nail to make Brexit happen, how he said all of these interest groups, whether lobbyists or the Tory party, tried to buy him dinner and buy him out, and he directly said how he wasn't interested in being bought. After Brexit, he walked away. He retired. He only came back when reform was doing well, and everyone was asking him to come back and lead them, just like he did with Brexit. However, since he's came back to politics, since he's become an MP, I've noticed a slight change in him, which initially I didn't think much of. In interviews, he would somewhat defend Starmer, not giving him the ruthless criticism he deserves.
Keir Starmer is doing what the Tories did not dare or feel brave enough to do during their very long period in office.
Yeah, and I find it quite difficult to disagree with a lot of what's been said today.
He would say how deporting the 1 million or so people illegally in this country is not realistic, when before he was an MP, he was constantly talking about the illegal boat crossings.
It's a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people. We simply can't do it. At the moment, it's a political impossibility.
But is it your ambition?
No.
That doesn't make any sense, that his policy is stopping illegal immigration, yet not deporting those already here illegally. I'm pretty good at keeping track of people's logical consistency, and if everything he says is to be believed, then his position is just plain irrational. Nigel Farage is not an irrational man. He is very rational. What he is not entirely forthcoming about what he believes. He's not a liar, at least not regularly. Yet in my judgment, he regularly omits the full truth of what he really believes. Ever since I realised that he's talked a lot about direct democracy and how much of a better system it is, being one of the main reasons I supported him, only to find out that is not in the Reform UK manifesto, that's made me pay close attention to exactly what his politics is. And frankly, I think he and his inner circle are Thatcherites, worshippers of the free market above all else, including the rights and dignity of the working classes, with no regard for their true concerns in the slightest. The only reason he wanted Brexit was purely for the economic deregulated free market. The working class traditional Labour voters he's been trying to get, these horrible nasty populists, they didn't vote for Brexit or reform so they could get screwed over a second time with Thatcherism 2.0. They voted for this because they want their country back. These are the people on the front lines who have suffered from all of these issues, watching their society decay into nothing. Watching their communities become more and more overpopulated and unsafe as their wages drop from importing cheap foreign labour, with not even the bare minimum expectation that these people integrate and get booted out when they commit crimes. No other country in the world with even a semblance of sanity would vote for this, and neither did we. It was imposed on us by a tiny elite at the top of the ivory tower as they control puppets like Starmer. And I think Farage is their new puppet. He finally did what he said he would never do. He sold out. If he's not going to deport the illegals we have here, only concerned with importing people who's been vetted at passport control, then I don't believe in the slightest he will stop the importing of cheap foreign labour once he is in power. Now he's been within smelling distance of being at number 10, I bet those behind closed doors dinners by the powers that be might start looking a lot more appealing now. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if they've offered him knighthood or something at some point in the future if he starts pulling his punches the same way they got Starmer to compromise and cooperate. He told lies about Tommy Robinson when he didn't even need to, him having his own issues. He pushed Ben Habib out of the way the more he talked about mass deportations and democratising the party. And now he's kicked out Rupert Lowe because he was getting too popular, being one of those nasty, pesky populists. You know, populism, that dirty word for popular opinion in a democracy that the ruling elites disagree with. Well, following Farage giving Lowe the boot, he's made his position as clear can be.
I'm not a populist.
Which one do you like?
I'm not a populist.
I've heard you call yourself a populist.
I've realised I'm not. I've realised that's a
This was
mistake.
last week you called yourself a populist.
No, I am not a populist.
And it's only now just occurred to me who Farage is. He's Gandhi. Nigel Farage is Muhammad Gandhi, a useful idiot being the puppet of opposition that's safe to keep around just in case the country riots. If the people decide they've had enough and riot, they simply just put him on the seat of power, knowing damn well he's not going to do anything to change the system. I think that means we're screwed. So, where does that leave us? Well, if we can enter Fantasyland for one moment, the only way I can see this situation getting fixed with Farage restoring his credibility is he takes a break, has a drink, spends an afternoon in a fishing boat and has a long, hard think, and decides he was wrong. I mean, he takes a huge bite of humble pie, throws his hands in the air and gives Lowe an apology, and then proceeds to fully democratise the party. If he did that, these issues would be forgotten and we'd all move on with the mission. Yet, as much as I wish that would happen, I don't see it. He will double down because that is what he really believes in. Him going to all these Labour seats, he let them believe what they wanted to hear, when in reality all he has to offer is Thatcherism. And that's why, in true Thatcher fashion, since this has blown up back in his face, he's now silenced Reform members from speaking about this at risk of having their membership revoked. Truly a man of the people who believes in transparency and freedom of speech. What I think is going to happen is Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib are going to take Elon Musk up on his offer and found a new party with him bankrolling it. Likely the old UKIP party and people like Tommy Robinson will join it, assuming he makes it out of jail alive. He's been in solitary confinement for what, 150 days now? And Reform. After a good amount of all the horrible populists leave, my bet is Reform will make a deal with the Tories, and they'll let Farage lead it if he starts rimming them hard enough. And when that happens, there is only one possible way I'd ever vote for Farage again, and that's putting direct democracy in his manifesto. And by putting it in, I mean outlining it directly on page 1, saying this country will be turned into a direct democracy on day 1 of taking office, making referendums legally binding, and letting 1% of voters call referendum on anything at will, just like Switzerland. But let's face it though, if he's going to go through all that rather than admit he made a mistake and decide said populists, aka what the majority actually want, deserve a seat at the table, then I think there's more of a chance he'll start wearing a dress and change his name to Susan. And the worst part is, for people like me, unless this potential new political party by Lowe and Habib puts direct democracy as one of their primary manifesto pledges, then I'm as good as politically homeless, seeing no point in voting at all. Because in my judgment, the problem itself is representative democracy. Representatives will always represent themselves before their constituents, and that's the truth. The UK Labour government are about as useful as a glass hammer, but in truth, all political parties are the same in all nations, because all people, when you boil them down, are all the same. People by their nature are stupid, selfish, self-serving creatures that are no more fit to govern a nation than a goldfish is. The reason why direct democracy works, why Switzerland's political parties are less corrupt, isn't because their people are better, but rather they're under a superior system of checks and balances, where their ability to call legally binding referendums at will creates an environment that people are less free to be corrupt in public. When people are free to be corrupt, they inevitably are, in true fashion of absolute power corrupts absolutely. Evidently, we've found a flaw with freedom, of the your rights end where mine begin variety. The rule of law is corrupt, police are corrupt, the education system is corrupt. Pretty much every system you can think of in society is as corrupt as much as it is allowed to be corrupt. But all of these systems, there is one that has more freedom than any other, and hence more corruption than any other. And that is government itself. All of these systems are limited in as far as they're governed. But who governs the government? The aristocracy? Evidently so. In a direct democracy, there is no House of Lords. The people themselves, the system of referendum is what does the job of governing the government. I'll be frank, as much as I've supported Reform UK and Nigel Farage, I have to take everything he and that party has to say about its support for direct democracy with a pinch of salt. Call it cynical, but words are cheap. They're so cheap, there was literally no reason to not put it in said piece of paper. The fact he didn't shows it's not his highest priority. If his head is in the clouds stroking his meat over the thought of being Prime Minister, it's easy to talk about destroying the will when you're not the puppet ruling over it. When you are, when you actually have power, real power, it becomes so easy to justify holding on to it just a little longer. Which I guess is why it was so easy to throw Rupert Lowe under the bus.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it!
I'm not going to say people like Farage can't implement these needed democratic reforms. I'm saying he won't unless there is shitloads of pressure behind him to do it. If people are allowed to get away with it being just a vague promise of they'll get round to it eventually after doing a few other things first, you can take that as a bona fide guarantee they definitely will not. I don't know if that pressure will manifest itself. All I know is if it doesn't, a few things will get reformed, yet the core of the system itself will not. So if you're a member or supporter of reform that feels strongly about fixing your democracy, don't take it for granted on a handshake deal. Speak up and demand it with assurances, not merely vague promises. Break ranks and directly tell him he is wrong. Because if he's going to play the game, the pantomime of, you have no choice but to vote for me or that other horrible party will get in, then he isn't part of the true opposition. At that moment he has become part of the uniparty, being just another one of their puppets. Vote with your feet and take a stand, because as horrible as it is, it's better to vote for no one than it is to vote for part of the problem. As honest and rational as he is, Farage is still just a man. He's still just a human being. Don't blindly take him at his word. For in the words of Greg House, everybody lies, the only variable is about what.
I'm not a populist.
Which one do you like?
I'm not a populist.
I was
No,
gonna say,
I am not a populist.
Well, perhaps he wants to be Prime Minister. Most people in politics do.
Anyway, those are my thoughts about that. If you have any thoughts yourself or any other topics you'd like me to cover, Tell me in the comments below, and I'll happily entertain them. Cheers.